Ethan Carter stepped inside his home in the late afternoon, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Every corner of the living room felt haunted by the absence of Rachel, whose photographs still decorated the shelves. The house had grown quiet in her absence, as if the very walls were holding their breath. He carefully placed his keys on a small table near the door and called out to Lily. "Dad, I'm here," Lily answered from the staircase. She was 7 years old, yet her eyes seemed older. She clutched a well-worn teddy bear that had once belonged to Rachel, its fraying edges a testament to how much comfort she found in it. Ethan forced a gentle smile as he walked over to his daughter. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, brushing back a strand of her hair. "How was your day?" Lily shrugged, her gaze drifting to a photograph of her mother near the staircase. The picture captured Rachel's bright smile on a summer day at a nearby park. Now that laughter existed only in memory. Lily's voice was quiet when she spoke again. "I missed Mom today." Ethan sighed and nodded. He missed Rachel every day. It had been 2 years since her death, yet the pain felt as raw as if it had happened yesterday. "I know," he said. "I miss her too." He led Lily into the living room, where the late afternoon sun highlighted dust motes dancing in the air. School papers, building blueprints, and unwashed coffee mugs cluttered the dining table. Ever since Rachel's passing, Ethan had struggled to balance his career as an architect with raising Lily on his own. His attempts to do everything by himself had left him exhausted and uncertain of his own capabilities. That night, after Lily went to bed, Ethan stood by a framed photo of Rachel. He remembered how she would hum while making coffee, or how she would kneel down to tie Lily's shoelaces before school. The silence in the house seemed deafening. He ran a hand through his hair and wondered if it was time to seek help in keeping the household together. Between the demands of his job and Lily's growing needs, he felt like he was barely hanging on. The following morning, Ethan made a few phone calls and arranged interviews for a house assistant. After a string of polite yet underwhelming meetings, one candidate stood out: Olivia Brooks. When Olivia stepped into the house, she offered a kind smile and soft-spoken greeting that immediately eased Ethan's doubts. She seemed to understand the delicate atmosphere as she carefully observed the framed pictures of Rachel. "I'm very sorry for your loss," she said gently, glancing at a photograph of Rachel that sat on the mantel. "I hope I can be of help." Ethan nodded, guiding Olivia through the home. "It's been tough, especially for Lily," he said. "I need someone who can organize schedules, help with daily chores, and be there for my daughter when work demands my time." Olivia listened attentively. Her voice was calm and compassionate as she spoke. "Of course. I'd be happy to do whatever I can to make things run smoothly. Lily must come first." That afternoon, Lily came home from school to find Olivia tidying the living room. The child's eyes were filled with curiosity and caution. Olivia greeted her with warmth. "Hi, Lily. You must be the princess of this house. Your dad's told me so much about you." Lily cast a questioning look at Ethan. He smiled, hoping to convey that Olivia was there to help them both. But Lily offered only a brief nod before retreating to her room. There was no excited greeting, no immediate acceptance. Ethan told himself that trust took time. As evening approached, Ethan showed Olivia the spare bedroom where she could stay on the nights she worked late. He noticed her gaze linger for a moment on the framed photo of Rachel in the corridor. The expression on Olivia's face was hard to read, hovering between curiosity and something else. Soon after, she assured him she would do her best to meet their needs. That night, Ethan settled into bed with an odd sense of relief. The house, once drowning in silence, now carried a different tone. He thought about the subtle way Olivia had bonded with Lily, how she had quickly straightened up the living room, and how she seemed attuned to the undercurrent of sadness that filled every room. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope that life might begin to regain some semblance of balance. He closed his eyes, letting that small hope lull him toward sleep. Yet somewhere in the dim corners of his dreams, he sensed a foreboding presence. It was as if the echo of Rachel's absence refused to settle. Not long after midnight, he woke briefly and looked around, certain he had heard something. The house was still. On a whim, he walked to a small table in the hallway and opened a drawer. Inside lay a torn photograph of Rachel, the edges ragged and part of her face missing. He frowned, trying to recall if he had done it himself in a moment of anger or grief, but no memory came. Confusion settled in his mind. He placed the torn photo back into the drawer and returned to bed, uneasy. Perhaps grief had played a trick on him, or perhaps Lily had accidentally torn it while looking at it. Still, as he drifted back into a restless sleep, the image of that torn photograph burned into his thoughts, raising a question he could not easily dismiss. At dawn, the house was cloaked in a tangible silence, as though waiting for something to break the peace. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked in the distance and a mail truck rumbled by. Inside, Ethan lay awake, his heart weighed down by an uncomfortable sense that the calm might be as fragile as shattered glass. The next morning began with an unexpected burst of efficiency. Olivia woke early, preparing a light breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast before Lily even came downstairs. For a fleeting moment, Ethan felt relieved by her presence. He found Lily in the kitchen, quietly nibbling on toast, while Olivia packed her lunch. The routine felt almost normal, almost comforting. "Did you sleep well?" Olivia asked, her voice gentle. She glanced at Lily, who nodded with a forced politeness. Ethan noticed that Lily avoided Olivia's gaze. She kept her eyes on the floor as she murmured a soft thank you for the food. Seeing this tension, Ethan ruffled Lily's hair. "Hey, how about we try to smile this morning?" he said, attempting to keep things light. Lily gave him a half-hearted grin, but her expression returned to one of guarded caution the moment she looked at Olivia. After breakfast, Ethan drove Lily to school. While stopped at a traffic light, he tried to probe gently. "You don't like Olivia very much, do you?" he asked. Lily stared at her fingers, quiet for a moment. "She's always in Mom's study," Lily said. "I went in there yesterday and she was touching Mom's things." Ethan blinked, trying to envision Olivia rummaging around Rachel's old study. Part of him felt defensive. He had allowed Olivia access to the house, so of course she might straighten rooms. He reassured Lily that Olivia was just cleaning and organizing. When Lily shrugged, Ethan felt a pang of guilt, unsure if he was brushing off her valid concerns. By the time he returned home, Olivia had organized the living room, stacked the mail, and even alphabetized the books on the shelf. In a way, her efficiency was admirable, but Ethan felt uneasy. Rachel's belongings had always been left more or less as she had kept them, serving as a subtle memorial. Now they were being moved, dusted, or placed out of sight. When he asked Olivia about Rachel's study, she offered a polite explanation. "I noticed it was dusty, so I sorted some papers, put away a few items. I hope that's all right. I don't want to overstep." Ethan forced a smile. "It's fine. I appreciate the help." That evening, Lily came home from school looking troubled. She went straight to her room and emerged holding a small wooden jewelry box that once belonged to Rachel. She tugged on Ethan's sleeve and whispered, "Look." Inside the box, where Rachel's favorite brooch should have been, lay only an empty velvet cushion. The brooch was gone. Lily's voice trembled. "Dad, it's missing." Ethan hesitated, recalling how precious that brooch had been to Rachel. He rummaged through drawers and asked Lily to check her bedroom again. When they found no trace of it, he turned to Olivia, who stood in the hallway watching them. "Have you seen a silver brooch with a small pearl in the center?" he asked. Olivia's face was an image of surprise. She shook her head slowly. "No, I don't think so. I've been cleaning, but I don't remember a brooch." Lily pursed her lips, her eyes brimming with distrust. Ethan gave her a reassuring look, then let out a resigned sigh. "We'll keep looking." Days passed, and more small signs began to appear. Lily complained that her mother's favorite scarf, once neatly hung in the closet, had vanished. At dinner one night, Lily set her fork down and looked across the table at her father. "Mom's things are disappearing," she said in a shaky voice. Ethan tried to be patient. "Honey, maybe it's just getting misplaced while Olivia cleans," he replied. "No," Lily said, her eyes glistening with unspoken fear. "She's making them vanish on purpose." Ethan glanced at Olivia, who sat silently at the edge of the table. She lowered her gaze, and Ethan wondered if perhaps Lily was being too sensitive, too protective over her mother's belongings. He wanted to believe Olivia was merely trying to tidy up the house, yet he couldn't deny how many items had gone missing. Late one night, as he was heading to bed, Ethan realized he hadn't seen the framed photograph of Rachel wearing that silver brooch in days. Searching the living room, he found the picture lying in a box with a stack of other items that had been removed from shelves. He picked it up, noticing something felt wrong about seeing Rachel's face hidden away. Carefully, he returned the photo to its place on the mantel. He heard a faint sound in the hallway and turned. Lily stood there in her pajamas, clutching her teddy bear. She looked at the photograph of her mother and then at Ethan. With a trembling voice, she asked a question that echoed through the quiet house. "Are you letting her erase Mom?" Ethan knelt down and wrapped his arms around his daughter. "Of course not," he whispered. But an uneasy wave of guilt swept through him. He felt as though he were failing both Lily and Rachel's memory. When Lily went back to bed, Ethan walked through the silent halls. The lights were off in Olivia's room. He paused, unsure whether to confront her or let it go until morning. In the end, his exhaustion won. He retreated to his own bedroom, closing the door on the unsettling notion that something was amiss. Before he drifted off to sleep, a single thought nagged at him. In a life overshadowed by grief, had he inadvertently welcomed something dangerous into his home? A subtle dread began to take root in his mind, leaving him with a heavy feeling that small signs might one day become undeniable truths. Morning brought the faint hum of life to the Carter household. Olivia's voice rose softly from the kitchen, calling Lily for breakfast. Though Lily obliged, she did so without enthusiasm. Ethan finished tying his tie and found his daughter sitting at the table, eyes fixed on her plate as Olivia poured her a glass of orange juice. The atmosphere felt forced, as though everyone was pretending normalcy. "How about some pancakes this morning?" Olivia asked. Her tone was pleasant, but Lily only shrugged and poked at her food. "I'm heading to a meeting downtown," Ethan said, trying to diffuse the tension with a smile. "I'll be back by lunch." Olivia nodded and assured him that she would take good care of Lily until then. Lily avoided looking at Olivia and mumbled she had homework to finish. As Ethan left, he felt the familiar ache of guilt. Lily's unease persisted, yet he needed to trust the new routine or risk falling behind at work. Later that morning, Ethan found himself distracted in a client meeting, rethinking Lily's concerns. He recalled the missing items, the strange arrangement of Rachel's possessions. Shaking off his doubts, he reminded himself that Lily was only 7 and still grappling with losing her mother. He tried to focus on architectural plans and budgets, but a nagging voice in his mind would not quiet. By the time he returned home around noon, Olivia was tidying up the living room. She greeted Ethan with a warm smile and a brief update on Lily's morning, assuring him she had helped Lily with her homework. He noticed Lily sitting near the stairs, a pencil and notebook in her lap. When he approached her, she looked up with troubled eyes. "Dad, the brooch," she whispered. "It's in Olivia's room. I saw it." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "When did you see it?" "Just now," Lily said, her voice trembling. Her door was half open. Ethan briefly closed his eyes, steeling himself. He walked through the hallway and knocked on Olivia's bedroom door. She answered with a puzzled expression, stepping aside to let him enter. The room was neat, the bed perfectly made. Ethan saw a small dresser near the window. Tension churned in his stomach. "I need to look around," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Lily thinks she saw something that belongs to Rachel." Olivia blinked, confusion washing over her face. "Of course," she replied, stepping aside. "I haven't touched any of Rachel's things, aside from cleaning." Ethan began opening drawers, scanning for any sign of Rachel's brooch. The first 2 drawers contained folded clothes, nothing unusual. The third drawer held a variety of small items, a hairbrush, a cosmetic bag, and a zippered pouch. His breath caught in his throat as he spotted Rachel's silver brooch at the bottom. He lifted it carefully, turning to face Olivia. "How did this get here?" he demanded. His voice came out sharper than he intended. Olivia's eyes widened in apparent shock. "I swear I have no idea," she said. "I've never seen that before. Maybe Lily put it there to make you suspicious of me." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He stared at the brooch, remembering how Rachel used to wear it on special occasions. "Are you accusing my daughter of lying?" he asked, his voice shaking with anger. "No," Olivia said quickly, her expression earnest, "but children do odd things sometimes, especially when they feel threatened by someone new in the house. Maybe she wanted to cause trouble, to get rid of me." Ethan didn't know what to believe. He clenched his fists, recalling the look of fear in Lily's eyes and the longing she had for her mother's belongings. Would Lily really hide the brooch just to frame Olivia? It seemed unlikely, but the alternative was even more unsettling. Eventually, Olivia lowered her gaze, her voice growing quiet. "I'm sorry if this caused confusion. I will stay out of Rachel's things. I promise." Reluctantly, Ethan left the room, closing the door behind him. He found Lily perched on the edge of the sofa, waiting with a look that was part curiosity, part dread. He handed her the brooch, and she held it against her chest with trembling hands. "Did she say how it ended up in her drawer?" Lily asked. "She doesn't know," Ethan replied, his tone weary. "But I'll keep an eye on her, okay?" Lily looked as though she wanted to say more but remained silent. She slipped the brooch into her pocket, then padded upstairs. Ethan sank onto a chair, running a hand across his tired eyes. That night, the air in the house felt thick with mistrust. None of them spoke much during dinner. Olivia seemed subdued. Lily watched her warily, and Ethan ate his meal in tense silence. Later, in the dim hallway light, he found Lily awake, shivering at the top of the stairs. "What's wrong?" he whispered. Lily rubbed her eyes. "I was thirsty," she said softly. "But I saw Olivia in the hallway. She was just standing there, looking at our doors." Ethan's heart thudded. He glanced toward Olivia's room, the door now closed. In that moment, he sensed that Lily might be telling the truth. Something about Olivia's behavior felt unnatural, as though she was always hovering near the threshold of their private lives. When he returned to his bedroom, he locked the door for the first time in months. It was a small act that left him feeling more unsettled than safe. The idea that he needed protection within his own home made sleep elusive. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and Ethan lay awake, wondering if his wife's memory was being invaded by a stranger's intentions. When morning finally arrived, he carried that unease with him like an invisible weight, uncertain of what to do next. Sunlight flooded the kitchen as Olivia prepared tea and set out a plate of cookies on the dining table. Her demeanor radiated a practiced calm, yet Ethan couldn't shake the lingering worry in the pit of his stomach. Lily sat nearby, flipping through her school notebook with a detached air. The tension in the room was tangible, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. "You both look tired," Olivia said with a gentle smile. "Why don't we sit and relax for a bit?" Ethan hesitated. He had planned to spend the morning looking into Olivia's references more closely, but her offer seemed polite. Lily, however, seemed resistant, her gaze moving from the teacups to Olivia's face. As they gathered around the table, Olivia poured tea into 3 cups. The steam rose in delicate wisps, carrying the faint smell of chamomile. Ethan picked up his cup and noticed a slight bitterness in the aroma, a detail that sparked a warning in his mind. He looked at Lily, who caught his eye with a worried expression. Just as he was about to sip, Lily spoke up. "Dad, can you help me find my notebook?" Her voice quivered, as though she were desperately looking for a reason to stop him from drinking. Ethan set down the cup. "Sure," he replied, following Lily into the hallway. Once they were out of earshot, Lily whispered, "I saw her put something in your cup, a drop of something from a small bottle. I don't know what it was." His pulse quickened. The memory of Rachel's brooch in Olivia's drawer, the missing items, and Olivia's strange presence at night all crashed together in his mind. Feeling his throat go dry, he returned to the kitchen where Olivia was sipping her own tea. She smiled when she saw him. "Is Lily all right?" Olivia asked, gesturing at the cookie plate. "I was hoping to chat with both of you over breakfast." Ethan forced a smile and lifted the cup to his lips, then pretended to take a small sip. Beneath his calm facade, alarm bells were ringing. He swallowed hard, tasting only a hint of warm tea against his tongue. "I feel a little off today," he said, setting the cup down. "Maybe I should go lie down." Olivia's eyes widened with concern. "You don't look well. Why don't you rest? I'll make sure Lily gets to school on time." The idea of Olivia driving Lily to school made Ethan shiver. He mustered a faint nod and walked toward his bedroom. As soon as he was out of sight, he slipped into the small corridor leading to his office. Quietly, he crouched behind a half-open door, watching Olivia's next moves. It felt like he was crossing a line by spying, but he couldn't ignore Lily's warning. He waited, heart pounding, until Olivia approached the hallway. She paused near his bedroom door, listening for any sound. Satisfied that Ethan was resting, she headed into the living room. Ethan followed step by careful step, staying just out of sight. He spotted her rummaging through drawers and opening a small cabinet where Rachel once kept special letters. She glanced at the papers inside, her expression darkening. Ethan stood frozen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this betrayal. Here was the person he had entrusted to restore order to his household, now digging through his wife's most personal effects. He wanted to storm in, demand answers, and call the police, yet something told him he needed more than outrage. He needed to know who Olivia truly was and why she was here. She closed the cabinet gently and left the room. Ethan retreated, slipping through the corridor back toward his bedroom. As he heard the soft tread of her footsteps pass, he exhaled a shaky breath. Gathering his courage, he waited until he was sure Olivia was out of earshot before grabbing his laptop. He typed Olivia Brooks into a background check site, determined to find anything that might explain what was happening under his own roof. The results he found were sparse. Olivia Brooks had a handful of references, but the addresses and phone numbers were inconsistent. Something was off. None of them led to a clear record of employment, and her supposed work history contradicted itself. Ethan's pulse quickened with each dead end. The woman he had invited into his home appeared to have no real past. He leaned back in his chair, anxiety spiking. If Olivia Brooks was a fabrication, who was she really? And why would she want to erase all traces of Rachel from his home? The questions pounded in his mind, refusing to let him rest. That afternoon, Ethan insisted on driving Lily to school himself, feigning recovery. On the way, Lily stared out the car window, quiet but watchful. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked gently. She kept her gaze on the road. "I'm worried about you, Dad. About us." The gravity in her voice made him grip the steering wheel tighter. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he said. "I won't let anything happen to us." Yet deep down, he was frightened by how little he knew about Olivia. He also felt guilt gnawing at him for letting a stranger slip so deeply into their lives. By the time he returned home, his hands were trembling with the weight of the morning's revelations. He found Olivia cleaning the kitchen, her face wearing a concerned expression. "Feeling better?" she asked. Ethan nodded absently, noticing how she studied his eyes as if searching for a sign of suspicion. He forced a polite smile, murmuring an excuse to check on some office files. Once he was alone, he pressed his back against the wall and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A single line of thought looped through his mind. Olivia Brooks was not the person she claimed to be. And if she was willing to tamper with his tea and rummage through Rachel's keepsakes, then what else was she capable of? Night fell, the house dim and silent. All the while, Ethan plotted his next step, determined to uncover the truth before it was too late. Ethan sat at his desk in a tense silence, sunlight streaming through half-drawn blinds. He had spent the better part of the morning plunging down a digital rabbit hole, scouring public records and background check databases. The name Olivia Brooks yielded little but dead ends, forcing him to consider the terrifying possibility that the woman in his home was living under a stolen identity. Each new clue pointed toward the involvement of someone called Nicholas Hale, though Ethan couldn't place the name in Rachel's past. He glanced at his phone, checking the time. Lily was still at school, and Olivia was out shopping for groceries, giving him a window of solitude. With a shaky breath, he clicked open a link that finally shed some light. An old newspaper clipping from a nearby county, referencing a woman named Olivia working under a different surname. The article mentioned a restraining order filed against a certain Nicholas Hale, though details were sparse. His heart hammered as he leaned back in his chair, trying to make sense of it all. Who was Nicholas Hale, and why did his name keep surfacing? Was he forcing Olivia to spy on Ethan? Or were they partners in something more sinister? A sudden sound broke Ethan's thoughts, the front door closing. Panicked, he slammed his laptop shut and rushed out of his office, attempting to look casual. Olivia had returned, holding a few grocery bags. She offered him a polite, practiced smile, but he noticed her eyes flicker with an uncertainty that matched his own. "Got some fresh produce for dinner," she said, heading toward the kitchen. Ethan nodded stiffly. "That's good, thank you." He lingered in the living room, monitoring Olivia through the doorway. She set the bags down and began to unpack them, humming softly. Every movement seemed meticulously controlled, as though she were trying to present an image of perfect domesticity. After dinner that night, Ethan insisted on taking Lily to a local ice cream parlor, hoping for a moment alone with his daughter away from Olivia's watchful gaze. Lily licked her cone in silence, eyes fixed on the sprinkles, until she finally spoke up. "Dad," she said quietly, "I had a dream about Mom last night. She was warning me." Ethan's throat tightened. "A warning about what?" Lily lowered her voice, as though afraid someone might overhear. "She said to stay away from Olivia, that something bad would happen if we didn't." Ethan wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulder, thinking about the unsettling clues piling up back home. He remembered the article referencing Nicholas Hale, the missing items, and Olivia's suspicious behavior. "We'll figure this out," he whispered. "I promise." The next morning, Ethan decided he couldn't wait any longer. After dropping Lily off at school, he drove to the county records office, an hour out of town. He spent a tense couple of hours rifling through dusty files and archived documents. To his relief, one of the clerks finally recognized Nicholas Hale's name. "Yeah, we had a restraining order filed against him a few years back," the clerk said, flipping through a stack of papers. "Something about harassing a woman he claimed he was in love with." A chill ran through Ethan. "Do you remember the woman's name?" The clerk nodded and handed over a tattered folder. Ethan's eyes scanned the text until they landed on the line that would change everything. Rachel Carter, then known by her maiden name. Adrenaline surged through him as he read the details. Nicholas Hale had once stalked Rachel, leaving threatening messages and even trying to break into her apartment. The record showed that the case had been dropped when Rachel moved out of state for college. Ethan's chest grew tight, rage and fear warring within him. Why had Rachel never told him? And how was Olivia connected to this man? He drove home with trembling hands, each red light feeling like an eternity. At the house, he found Olivia folding laundry in the living room, the faint smell of detergent clinging to the air. She wore a polite smile, but her eyes sharpened at the sight of Ethan's strained expression. Without warning, Ethan confronted her. "Who is Nicholas Hale?" Olivia's face went pale. Her hands stopped folding, clutching a shirt so tightly that her knuckles turned white. For a split second, she looked terrified, as if cornered. "He's no one," she stammered, forcing an uneasy laugh. "Why do you ask?" Ethan stepped closer, refusing to be swayed by her flimsy denial. "You have a history with him, don't you? He's connected to Rachel, too. I found records of a restraining order." Olivia's eyes darted toward the hallway, as though calculating an escape. She bit her lip, a flicker of desperation crossing her face. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "He made me do things. I never wanted to hurt you or Lily." Ethan's gut clenched at the mention of his daughter. He opened his mouth to demand an explanation, but a buzzing phone on the coffee table derailed the confrontation. Olivia glanced at the screen, which displayed an unfamiliar number. Before Ethan could grab it, she snatched the phone and answered in a hushed voice. He caught only fragments. "He's getting suspicious. I can't keep this up. Please, Nicholas, I'm scared." Nicholas. That single name sliced through the room like a knife. When Olivia ended the call, Ethan's anger flared. "Get out," he ordered, voice trembling. "I want you gone." Her eyes watered, and for a moment she looked genuinely distraught. But something changed in her demeanor. She dropped the shirt, grabbed her purse, and hurried for the door. With a final panicked glance at Ethan, she fled. Ethan collapsed onto the couch, hands shaking. Olivia was gone, but if Nicholas Hale was still out there, he knew this was only the beginning. The house felt eerily quiet as he sat alone, the magnitude of Rachel's hidden past crashing down on him. He glanced at the silent hallway and thought of Lily at school, unaware of the danger circling them. He pulled out his phone and dialed Lily's school to speak with the front office. "Please make sure my daughter doesn't leave with anyone but me," he instructed, heart pounding. "I'll pick her up myself." Just as he hung up, a text message flashed across his screen. It was from an unknown number. The message read, "Now you'll know how it feels to lose everything." Ethan felt a cold dread tighten around his lungs. Nicholas Hale had made his move, and it wasn't just about haunting the memory of Rachel anymore. It was about destroying what remained of Ethan's life, starting, Ethan feared, with Lily. Trembling with anxiety, Ethan raced to Lily's school, arriving breathless at the entrance. He found her waiting inside the administration office, clutching her backpack like a lifeline. Relief flooded him when she was safely in his arms, although fear still churned in the pit of his stomach. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked, wide-eyed. He forced a reassuring tone. "We need to be careful for a while, okay? I'll explain when we get home." They drove back in tense silence, Lily's wary eyes flickering to her father every time he sighed or tightened his grip on the wheel. When they arrived, the house stood unsettlingly still, like a stage after the final curtain. There was no sign of Olivia, of course, but the air felt heavier, as if something malevolent lingered just out of sight. Ethan locked the doors and led Lily into the living room, keeping his voice calm despite the fear rattling his nerves. "There's a man named Nicholas Hale. He knew your mom a long time ago," he said haltingly, struggling to find the right words for a 7-year-old. "Olivia was working for him, or maybe he was making her work for him. I'm not sure, but I won't let anyone hurt you. Do you understand?" Lily nodded, her small hand curling into Ethan's. "I'm scared," she whispered. He rested his chin on top of her head, holding her close. "I know, sweetheart. Me too." That evening, Ethan called the police to report Olivia's suspicious behavior and mention the text message. A pair of officers arrived, but without concrete evidence of a crime beyond trespassing and potential harassment, they had little power to act. After they left, Ethan realized he was alone again, grappling with a threat that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. He revisited Rachel's old study, searching for any clue that might link her to Nicholas in a way he hadn't known. Rummaging through the drawers, he found an old diary with worn edges, certain pages dog-eared. His breath caught as he flipped through the entries. "He won't leave me alone. I'm afraid of what he might do. I should tell Ethan, but I'm ashamed. If anything happens to me, it will be his fault, or mine, for letting this go on." A lump formed in Ethan's throat. He read passages describing how Nicholas stalked Rachel, insisting she belonged to him. Rachel wrote about the guilt she felt for not telling Ethan. Her final entries hinted at a fear that Nicholas might try something extreme. Then, heartbreakingly, they stopped. The last page ended just days before her death in a car accident that Ethan had always believed to be a tragic twist of fate. He set the diary down, recalling the possibility that Nicholas might have sabotaged her vehicle. Horror rushed over him. If Nicholas truly blamed Ethan for stealing Rachel, it made a twisted kind of sense that he would seek revenge on him and Lily. At midnight, the wind howled outside as Ethan paced the living room. Sleep was impossible. Every time he shut his eyes, he pictured Lily in danger or remembered that cryptic text from Nicholas. He checked the locks on every door and window, feeling the vulnerability of being a single father under threat. The following morning brought no relief. Lily was restless, sensing her father's tension. They shared a quiet breakfast of cereal and fruit, the hush between them broken only by the clink of spoons. Ethan was stirring his coffee mechanically when he heard a car pull into the driveway. Peering through the window, he felt a surge of alarm. An unfamiliar black sedan idled outside, engine running. He told Lily to stay put, then cautiously opened the door. A man in a dark jacket sat behind the wheel, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. After a moment, the car reversed out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. Ethan's heart hammered. Was it Nicholas? Unable to function under the weight of the threat, Ethan took Lily to a close friend's house. Eric, a former college roommate and now a local firefighter, listened as Ethan recounted the bizarre series of events. Eric offered them a spare room for as long as they needed. But that afternoon, a text arrived on Ethan's phone. "Running won't help. She's safest at home." Ethan's blood ran cold. Nicholas was watching him, possibly even following him. The realization left him torn between keeping Lily hidden with Eric or returning to confront whatever awaited them at the house. For a moment he thought about ignoring the message, but fear for Lily's safety overwhelmed him. Reluctantly, Ethan took Lily back home, feeling trapped by Nicholas's game of cat and mouse. The very walls that once sheltered his family now felt like a prison under watchful eyes. To calm himself, Ethan began checking the security cameras he had installed after Rachel's death, a precautionary measure he never thought he'd actually need. As night fell, the house fell silent, illuminated only by a few lamps. Ethan studied each camera feed, scanning for any sign of movement. Then he noticed something off, a figure creeping through the side yard. His heart leapt into his throat. He grabbed his phone, preparing to call the police again just as the doorbell rang, the abrupt sound echoing in the still air. Cautiously, he opened the door to find Olivia standing there, soaking wet from the drizzle. Tears streaked her face, and she looked genuinely terrified. "Please," she begged, voice trembling, "I need your help." Ethan's first instinct was to slam the door in her face, but Lily peeked out from behind him, eyes wide. Olivia's hands shook as she held them up, showing she was unarmed. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said, each word tumbling out in desperation. "Nicholas threatened my family. I had no choice." Ethan stood frozen, anger and confusion battling with the small flicker of compassion he saw in her trembling form. "Why should I believe you?" he asked, voice taut. Olivia lowered her head, tears falling onto the doorstep. "Because he wants Lily now, and if you don't stop him, he'll take her away." In the next moment, the lights in the entire neighborhood flickered. Olivia's eyes darted behind her as though expecting Nicholas to appear at any second. Whether or not he could trust her, Ethan realized he might need Olivia's insight to keep Lily safe. Letting her in felt dangerous, but leaving her out there, perhaps even driving her straight into Nicholas's arms, could be worse. After a long pause, Ethan stepped aside, allowing Olivia into the living room. She collapsed onto the couch, damp hair clinging to her face. Her voice quivered as she recounted how Nicholas had coerced her. He had found her when she was at her most vulnerable, latching on to her desperation for money and her fear of being alone. Then, he demanded she infiltrate Ethan's home, gather details about his habits, and find a way to torment him using Rachel's memory. Only Olivia claimed she had no idea how far Nicholas would take his plan. As she spoke, the shadows on the walls seemed to press closer, as though the entire house were listening. Lily watched from a distance, uncertain but curious. Ethan listened intently, each new revelation confirming that Nicholas was pulling the strings. Yet no matter how earnest Olivia seemed, trust was a luxury Ethan couldn't afford. Suddenly, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, eyes full of dread. "He's here," she whispered. "He says to bring Lily to him or he'll come inside and get her himself." Before Ethan could react, the lights cut out completely, plunging the house into darkness. Lily screamed and Olivia gasped. The sound of breaking glass erupted from the rear of the house, followed by heavy footsteps that approached with calculated slowness. A voice echoed down the hallway, quiet but menacing. "Time's up, Ethan." Fear like Ethan had never felt gripped him. He fumbled for Lily in the darkness, his mind racing. Nicholas Hale was in his home, fulfilling the threat he had made. And the only advantage Ethan had left was the resolve to protect his daughter at any cost. Ethan clutched Lily's hand in the dark, heart pounding like a frantic drum. Olivia stood nearby, illuminated only by faint moonlight spilling through the living room window. The heavy footsteps crept closer, each one a jolt to Ethan's nerves. Nicholas Hale had arrived, and now every second felt like a countdown to disaster. "Stay behind me," Ethan whispered to Lily. He grabbed a flashlight from a shelf and clicked it on, the beam slicing through the darkness. A low laugh resonated through the hallway. "Come on, Ethan," Nicholas called. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Olivia looked at Ethan, her eyes full of fear. "We have to run," she hissed, voice quavering. But Ethan shook his head. He was done running. The house that once belonged to him and Rachel had become a battleground, and if he fled, Nicholas would only chase them. Instead, he guided Lily behind the sofa, instructing her to stay low. Then he inched forward, flashlight in one hand, fists clenched at his sides. The beam caught a flicker of movement near the kitchen doorway. Nicholas stepped into view, a tall figure wearing dark clothes. His grin was cold, eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity. "After all these years," he murmured, "I finally get to meet the man who stole Rachel from me." Ethan's voice trembled with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about. Rachel was never yours." Nicholas took a menacing step forward. "She should have been. We had a connection. She told me so before you convinced her to leave. I waited in the shadows, watching until she was gone for good. Did you ever wonder why her car crashed that night?" Ethan's heart lurched. Hearing Nicholas hint at involvement in Rachel's death confirmed his worst fears. He tightened his grip on the flashlight, anger boiling beneath his skin. "You did it, didn't you? You sabotaged her car." Nicholas shrugged, an eerie half-smile on his lips. "She wouldn't leave you. I thought removing her from the picture would hurt you enough, but you've carried on. So now, I want you to know true pain." A cry from behind them drew Nicholas's attention. Olivia stood there, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, "you told me if I helped, you wouldn't hurt anyone." Nicholas sneered, revealing the depth of his cruelty. "I say a lot of things, Olivia. Don't tell me you believed every word." He lunged at her, but Ethan sprang between them, shoving Nicholas back with a burst of adrenaline. They grappled, the flashlight clattering to the floor and rolling away. In the moonlit chaos, Ethan landed a punch, only to receive a brutal strike to his ribs. Pain shot through him, but he refused to yield. From the corner of his eye, he saw Lily's small form trembling behind the sofa. "Run, Lily," he shouted, swallowing the agony in his side. Lily didn't move, too frightened to leave her father. Olivia darted forward, snatching Lily's arm. "Come on," she hissed, voice shaking. Whether she intended to help or harm Lily, Ethan couldn't be certain, but he couldn't focus on that now. Nicholas hammered a blow to his shoulder, sending him crashing into a side table. The jarring impact toppled a lamp, plunging the room into near total darkness again. Nicholas loomed over Ethan, breathing heavily. "I dreamed of this moment," he seethed, "watching you lose everything just like I lost Rachel." With a desperate burst of strength, Ethan kicked out, catching Nicholas in the kneecap. Nicholas stumbled, giving Ethan enough time to scramble to his feet. The two men circled each other in the dark, guided by shallow breaths and the glint in Nicholas's eyes. Every nerve in Ethan's body screamed with pain, but giving up meant dooming Lily. Olivia's voice rang out from the hallway, echoing with terror. "Stop! Nicholas, you promised me." Then came a terrifying sound, a scream from Lily abruptly cut off. Ethan's blood froze. He sprinted toward the hallway, Nicholas's footsteps close behind. By the time he reached them, Nicholas had Lily in his grasp, a trembling hand across her mouth. "Let her go!" Ethan roared, stepping closer, but Nicholas had a knife. Ethan halted, waves of horror coursing through him. "I tried polite," Nicholas said coldly. "Now we do it my way." Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she stared at her father with terrified eyes. The moment stretched, each second an agonizing wait for tragedy. Then, in a move as surprising as it was risky, Olivia stepped forward, positioning herself between Nicholas and Ethan. "Nicholas, take me instead," she begged. "Leave Lily out of this." Nicholas let out a bitter laugh. "You? Why would I want you? You're nothing but a pawn. I never planned on sparing you." He pushed Olivia aside, sending her sprawling onto the floor. Lily let out a muffled cry, her eyes fixed on Ethan. In that split second, Ethan saw his only chance. As Nicholas sneered, Ethan lunged, slamming into him. The knife clattered to the ground. Lily broke free, stumbling back into the hallway. Chaos erupted. Nicholas and Ethan tumbled across the floor, grappling for control. Olivia scrambled to scoop Lily into her arms, shielding her. Just then, the wail of sirens in the distance cut through the night. Nicholas stiffened, momentarily distracted. With all the strength he could muster, Ethan drove his elbow into Nicholas's chest. The man collapsed, gasping for air. Ethan darted to Lily and Olivia, shoving them behind him protectively. Nicholas rose with fury in his eyes, but the flashing red and blue lights through the windows signaled the arrival of the police. He glanced around, wild and desperate. In a final crazed attempt, he grabbed the fallen knife and lunged toward Lily again. Ethan intercepted him, hooking his arm with every ounce of energy left. The blade nicked Ethan's forearm, but he managed to wrest it from Nicholas's grip. Then, with a pained grunt, Ethan delivered a solid punch that knocked Nicholas to the floor. Police officers burst through the front door, guns drawn. Nicholas was pinned, rage twisting his features as he spat threats. "I'll never forgive you," he hissed at Ethan. "This isn't over." Handcuffs clinked around Nicholas's wrists, and the danger finally subsided. Adrenaline drained from Ethan's body, leaving him exhausted. Lily rushed to him, tears flooding her eyes. He knelt down and pulled her into a trembling hug. Olivia stood behind them, arms wrapped around herself, too shaken to speak. In a blur of flashing lights, uniformed officers took Nicholas away, along with Olivia, who willingly turned herself in. She looked back at Ethan and Lily with tear-filled eyes, as if to apologize for the part she played. Ethan, cradling Lily in his arms, could only nod grimly. The damage was done. They were alive, but the emotional toll would not fade so easily. As the police cars pulled away, Ethan found himself staring at the empty driveway, battered and sore. Lily clung to his side, her sobs softening into hiccups. He pressed a trembling kiss to her forehead, flooded with relief that she was safe. But as he gazed at the shattered glass and disheveled furniture, he knew life would never be the same again. 3 months passed before Ethan felt ready to pack up the last of his belongings. The house that had once symbolized a shared future with Rachel had become a monument to too many ghosts. Boxes lined the walls, each filled with keepsakes and memories that Ethan and Lily would carry into a new chapter of their lives. After Nicholas Hale's arrest, the truth behind Rachel's death had slowly come to light. Investigators unearthed evidence supporting the theory that Nicholas tampered with her brakes. Though the final verdict was still pending, Ethan's sorrow over Rachel's loss mixed with a faint sense of vindication. Her tragic end hadn't been random, and now justice was a real possibility. Olivia had also been taken into custody. She provided detailed statements about Nicholas's manipulations, claiming she never intended to harm Lily or Ethan. Whether or not the courts would believe her was uncertain, but Ethan found a small measure of pity for the desperation that had led her down that path. In the days following that harrowing night, Ethan focused on helping Lily heal. She experienced nightmares and refused to leave his side at first, jumping at every unexpected sound. Therapists and child counselors reminded Ethan that patience and consistency were key. Over time, Lily's resilience shone through, guided by her father's unwavering presence. Now, in the soft light of a late afternoon, Ethan stood in the empty living room, gazing at the walls stripped of photos and decorations. A gentle breeze drifted in through the open front door, carrying with it the faint smell of freshly cut grass. Lily stood beside him, holding the teddy bear Rachel once gave her. She looked up. her eyes full of unspoken questions. "Are we really leaving?" she asked quietly. Ethan crouched down, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart. We're starting somewhere new, a place with fewer shadows." Lily took a deep breath, clutching her teddy bear more tightly. "Will Mom's memory come with us?" Ethan smiled gently, tears threatening to surface. "Always. We'll carry her in our hearts everywhere we go." They stepped outside into the waning sunlight, closing the door behind them for the last time. The moving truck was already packed, and Ethan double-checked to make sure Lily's bike was securely fastened. Once satisfied, he guided her to the car. The sky stretched out before them, tinged with hues of pink and gold. They drove for hours until they reached a quiet town nestled near rolling hills. The new house was modest but cozy, chosen for its peaceful surroundings. Lily lit up at the sight of a small backyard garden, talking excitedly about planting flowers. Ethan felt a stirring of hope, a sense that this could be the sanctuary they both needed. The first morning in their new home dawned clear and bright. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the bare wooden floors. Ethan made breakfast, pancakes with chocolate chips, just the way Lily liked them. Sitting across from her, he realized that for the first time in a long while, he felt a measure of calm. After breakfast, they ventured outside, hand in hand, exploring the quiet neighborhood. Lily pointed out a nearby park, laughing at a squirrel darting up a tree. Her laughter was pure and unburdened, a sharp contrast to the haunted hush that had followed them for months. Ethan's chest flooded with gratitude and relief. He had almost lost her, both to grief and to Nicholas's cruelty. But here she was, smiling in the morning sun. Later that day, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows on the grass, father and daughter settled on the porch steps. Lily rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, and he put an arm around her, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves on a nearby tree. Lily looked up at the horizon, her expression contemplative. "Do you think Mom can see us from wherever she is?" she asked softly. Ethan's eyes glistened. "I do, sweetheart. I think she's proud of how brave you've been." Silence enveloped them, comforting in its simplicity. The memories of what they had endured would never fully disappear. Rachel's tragic death, Nicholas's obsession, Olivia's betrayal, and the night that terror walked through their door. Yet each day offered a step toward healing, a chance to reclaim life from the grip of fear. Finally, Ethan rose and guided Lily inside. Their new home was still scattered with unpacked boxes, but the sense of possibility felt boundless. In a quiet moment, Ethan placed Rachel's favorite photograph on the mantel. In it, she was smiling beside him. Lily perched on her lap. The photo was a snapshot of a happier time, a reminder of love, loss, and resilience. He traced the outline of Rachel's face with his fingertip. "We'll be okay," he murmured, as though speaking to both her and himself. Then he turned to find Lily peeking around the corner, her eyes filled with warmth. "Dad," she said, voice tender, "can we order pizza and watch a movie?" Ethan smiled, heart lighter than it had been in years. "Absolutely." And with that simple plan, one of everyday comfort, they embarked on a new chapter, stepping into the soft glow of a life that still held room for hope. Their past could never be erased, but the future was wide open, waiting for them to fill it with fresh memories. Together they moved forward, knowing they had already survived the darkest moments and emerged stronger on the other side.